I'm going to try and expand the IEIF again. It's Impact Economy Innovations Fund, a branding nightmare, actually. And nobody can keep track of like what. So there was India there was Impact there was. So how did we come up with a name like that? We were trying to define what exactly is required to create an ecosystem around social businesses. And we looked at what are the outcomes that we're really like looking at achieving. The first outcome obviously was social impact. The second was to create an economic activity which is sustainable and therefore scalable. Therefore there's economy. It's innovative. How have people been doing this differently? You do require different solutions for addressing ecosystem needs of the social businesses. So there's innovation. And finally, the grant had to be brought in there, so it was the fund. So much to the horror of all our colleagues, we just picked up the three things that we wanted to achieve and then put it up as a name. So like it's been confusing to everybody. Why did we exactly do this? For those of you who might not be very familiar with the work that we do, Omidyar Network is a philanthropic investment firm. One more oxymoron, philanthropic and investment. So what do we mean by that? We are looking at addressing the larger needs of people. We believe businesses can do good, and there are other investments that can do good as well, which includes the nonprofit sector. So for us, when we are talking about investments, it actually means both for-profit and nonprofit investments as such. And one of our mandates in that context is to say, how do we, in fact, build a robust economic activity around this part? So therefore, ecosystem building is one of the key pillars of our own investment thesis. So in this context of, so when we were looking at impact investing, we've been at it for a few years. And one of the biggest challenges, we've been talking to different impact investors. I had shared a panel with Acumen a few weeks ago, and it was interesting. So all of us have different definitions of what exactly impact itself is. So you start from a problem. You're talking about social businesses, social enterprises. You're talking about impact investors. You're talking about financial returns. You're talking about social returns. You're talking about double bottom line. You're talking about triple bottom line. So there's a lot of things floating around. What exactly does this mean is something which is confusing to practitioners like us. We're still struggling. And it is also confusing to the whole, for us to actually like define this is exactly the ecosystem that we are looking at developing. So our intent was to say, therefore, like, let's attempt to solve a few of the problems so that we will be able to get a more robust activity which goes around in creating greater impact. So greater impact actually it takes both social impact as well as financial impact into consideration. That was basically what we were thinking about when we were talking to Rockefeller, and we decided to run this as a collaborative effort. And again, if you look at the two of us, between Rockefeller and us, our theses are very different. We come from a different perspective and they come from a different perspective. So it was an interesting collaborative effort. And we also looked at, we decided that we do together in different kind of markets. Our areas of focus are Latin America and India, where we have some kind of, where our focus is, and we have people on the ground as well. So we ran this together with Rockefeller Foundation in India as well as in Latin America. They went on and ran it in Asia and in Middle East as well. So what's our motive? When we looked at the problem definition, there were a few things which were very obvious, very simple, but nevertheless needed some amount of activity. One is to actually define what impact is, to define what impact investing means. Does that cover the entire gamut of activities that we're talking about, or is that restrictive? Well, none of us knew. And then there were also the question of like, what is the metric that we would use to say this is impact investing or it isn't? So it's a chicken and egg story, isn't it? Till you define it, you wouldn't know how to measure, and you would not know what to metricize, and then without the metrics, there is no measurement. So we were like, so that was the point at which we started to say that like, let's start with that. That's one clear problem definition that we had. So we said like we would like to constitute at least kind of a industry body which will be able to get people, different actors in the system to come together to define what things are. Right? So some definitions are broader and some definitions are narrower, but nevertheless, let's at least try and figure out like if there are people who are willing to tackle the challenge of creating a definition. So that was the first thing that we wanted to do. The second thing is to broadly say, if you look at investing as such in the context of venture capital, we are looking around and we are talking about capacity and leadership, and there have been different parts of the chain which have been in existence. So there are people who support entrepreneurs, who are not only investors, but they are intermediaries, they are incubators, they are accelerators, and there are mentor networks, different kind of people who come in and help entrepreneurs. If that is true of venture capital, which is a little bit more defined, and your returns are only measured by financials, in the case of social entrepreneurship, it's a little bit more difficult, and therefore you require a little bit more on that system operating as well. So that was a second problem area that we defined, to create the capacity to help people who help social entrepreneurs as well. The third part of it is a very interesting problem that, like the depth of funding, be it in venture capital or in impact investing, is actually fairly thin as far as, emerging markets are concerned. So a key part of what we believed was important is to see how we can get local people, high net worth individuals, angel investors, call them what you may, industrialists, corporates. So any of these bodies, how do you actually get them to engage? Without the local economy supporting impact innovation, there is no impact or innovation going to happen. So that was a key part of what we said as a thesis, to say, to define that this is one aspect that we would like to see people attempt at least. And then we came down to saying, okay, so on the one hand, how do people get to know about what's happening in the sector? So there is an information piece as well. So the way that we had constructed it is definitions, impacts, definitions and metrics as one bucket, the ecosystem as a second bucket. The third bucket was in terms of, the third bucket is in terms of the domestic capital and the domestic participation which was required, and the fourth bucket is about how do you get the stories across, the information bucket. So that's broadly what we had as broad themes. We found there were about, so when we did the exercise last year with Rockefeller Foundation in January and with Dastra, we announced it in January. We had in March about, sorry, that's my time check. In March we had about, 110 applications, and most of it was around the problem of helping entrepreneurs. We had one application in helping define the industry, and we had about a few applicants who were ready to tackle the domestic, how do you mobilize domestic support for the entrepreneurs as a problem, and a couple of applications which was about how do you showcase entrepreneurs as such. So that was broadly our story so far. Today we have the finalists who actually got the grants from the IEIF, the Impact Economy Innovations Fund, and each one of them will have the story to tell you, their own stories to tell you, and their own definitions of why they felt what the applications that they had was interesting, and how they have achieved, what they've achieved so far, and their challenges as well.